Welcome back to Leadership Synergized. This week, Dr. Brady Scott joins us. Leadership Synergized is focused and brings an intent to bring leaders and individuals whom you may not have had a chance to meet in your walk of life and hear from them, their experiences, their views, what they've observed, how they've taken their lessons learned and put them into their personal growth, but also towards ensuring success of their organization and their team. Dr. Scott, welcome back, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Dr. Scott, before we jump in and build off of where we left off last week around leaders and educators and how that all blends towards the vision and identifying their why, I want to jump back just from your experience. Obviously, you were an assistant principal, you started in the classroom, you were a coach, and then you moved into it and then moved over to an assistant superintendent aspect. Would you just kind of share for the individuals moving from superintendent at roughly a small school corporation of probably 1,000 students to where you are today as an assistant? Talk a little bit about how that transition and comparison of roles might be seen from your seat now. Roughly, you've been in your current role a year plus.
Yes. I'm in my second year as an assistant superintendent in a district of just over 8,000 students. And as you said, I was a superintendent in a district of, at the time, just under 1,000. We were at 800 students. The biggest difference in that transition is in the smaller district, you're a one-man show. You are everything to everybody. I used to tell people when there's a human resource issue, that's my issue. When there's a safety and security issue, that's my issue. When there's a curriculum issue, that's my issue. So you take care of everything. And the biggest thing in a small district, it's really hard to move the ship forward. You're just really trying to keep the ship afloat because there's just so many things. And it's interesting. I used to tell my superintendent colleagues of mine, just because you have a district of 14,000 students doesn't mean that the DOE says that I'm not responsible for the same things that you're responsible for. You have a staff of 12, I have a staff of 3. So moving forward into my current role, it's been a nice transition. I cannot say that I did not enjoy my previous time as a superintendent and will one day want to roll back into that role. I learned so much from that initial superintendency that I would not be as successful as I am now, not having done that before. But in my current role, it allows me to delve into things I think are more productive and positive in moving the needle forward for our students and staff, just simply because I have more time and I'm not so dedicated to so many things.
And you're talking about the small school superintendent's role. That's really true of all the roles in the district, whether you're the principal, the classroom teacher, there's just fewer resources and basically more focus necessary.
It is, and I will say one of the things that it really helped me with, and I would say it helps anybody in a small district with, because of those limited number of resources, you've got to be extremely creative in your approach to problem solving, development of new initiatives and how you're going to achieve those. You have to have an extreme amount of creativity, and you have to have a really strong team with you to work off of because everybody's going to have to bring something to the table.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Scott. But Dr. Scott, last week when we ended, you were talking about your view of how educators can become more valuable, even more so than what they already are, by at times looking to lead first in that aspect. I love that alignment and analogy. And in my experiences, I'm not so sure that I don't believe that we should be leaders first with educators right alongside in that piece, because we're really developing and helping those young children, those younger adults, if you will, depending on the level that we teach as educators, helping them identify their potential, the values they have inside, not telling them what they have, but we want them developing and growing their own potential through their values. And that takes influence. And as John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, no more, no less.
You bring up a great point. You bring up the point of being a leader before being an educator, or being a leader and educator hand in hand. I think that that is an extremely impactful insight, simply because we have such a responsibility to our students, regardless of age, of demonstrating that leadership to them and allowing them to see what they can become, regardless of the background they come from. And we will have students that will look at their teachers as the most positive person in their life. And they may look at them as the only person that they get a kind word from that day. And sometimes the aspect of simply showing them you can do anything you put your mind to, and instilling those values of positivity within them, is maybe far greater than any lesson that we teach them about mathematics or English in a given day. But that requires us to not only be that educator, but to be that leader amongst those students every day.
Well said. I could not agree with you more. And, a thought jumps into my mind as well. As, I too transitioned from industry outside of education to be an educator later in career, if you will, later in life. And in the manufacturing environment in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, this aspect of utilizing data almost fully when making decisions just grabbed hold, right?
Mhm.
It was, your operational excellence is measured off this data, key performance indicators, KPIs in that setting. And I became very good, not bragging, because at this phase of my life, Dr. Scott, I wish I'd never developed the skill that I developed, and I'm not near as good as others, to where data helped me make decisions, or help my team and I make decisions, is the way I should say that, and then allowed us to manage multiple things that were going on, at least in our minds. When I look back, I think that was all a facade in those pieces. And I also will state this, because it's really permeated education over the past 20, 25 years. Not that data was never used, right? Yeah, I mean, grading papers, putting grades in, sure, it was used. But to the extreme that it's come to now, I have a view that we've went too far. We've overcorrected the data piece. I concur and come back to the theory and the practice that you just referenced. If we bring value to the people, the students, the staff, the teachers, the school community, the parents, data is going to take care of itself. But when we start with the data, we miss out a lot of what our society needs to have back.
You're exactly right. And one of the things that I think we've lost sight of is we are dealing with an imperfect subject, that being our students. They are far from perfect, and we are far from perfect as educators. But you're absolutely right. There is a use and a need for data to understand trends. But I think we've gotten to such a point that we've made every student their own individual little data silo, where we look at every possible metric about them that we could possibly, and I think it just absolutely dehumanizes the whole impact that we can have. I go back to we have to develop rituals and relationships with our students, and data does not develop relationships. I can have the best data in the world that can tell me every bit of answer, but if I don't form some form of a relationship with my students, we can never move forward in a positive fashion. We can't have a hard conversation when we need to. We can't have that conversation about what's going wrong. So while I think there is a need for data and I understand its purpose, it can't be the sole purpose.
And to build on what you just said a bit, Dr. Scott, because I love the direction that you're going and where your heart's at. And I think obviously it's what makes you an outstanding leader and has brought you the success and significance you've had. When our first conversation, whether it's with another teacher, whether it's with a parent, or it's with an administrator, it's with ourselves, when our first conversation to kind of introduce that student to us is focused on, well, what was their grade last year? What's their GPA? Well, we've missed out that first opportunity to connect and come alongside and find that common ground.
I encourage all of my administrators, my teachers, when you meet a student, the first part of the conversation should never center around what do you know, what have you learned, all this. I want them to find out more about what interests them.
Mm,
What's your favorite shoe? What's your favorite
mm.
sports team? What books do you like to read? What do you do for entertainment? Do you like video games? What music do you like? Let's find something that's maybe common ground that we can talk about. And I encourage them to do that for all of their classes, simply because there will come a moment where you'll have two students that maybe like the same music, but would never have come together because they come from different walks of life. And you're going to pair those two kids together. And lo and behold, you're going to form a connection between those two that would never have happened. And I think as educational leaders, when we can build relationships not only with our students but between students, I think we're only, our job is to make the world a better place, and that's just one small step in that process.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that heart and that view and that vision. Dr. Scott, just circling back around to where we started last week and introducing you, the educator, the educational leader, the husband, the father, the community leader. When you think back about those individuals in your life that have really made a difference as you reflect today back in your development, where you are, visionary aspects such as what you just discussed, who stands out to you?
Well, there's a number of people out there. I've always been involved in sports and athletics, so I've always gravitated to coaches, not always because of their X's and O's, but how they were able to take a group of individuals and sacrifice own personal success for a greater team success. When I think about those coaches, one of the ones that I think of the most is Dean Smith, and how he was able to take 5 All-Americans and give up, personal accolades for the betterment of the team. I always thought that was amazing. But in my own personal life, my grandfather was the one that I looked to the most. He was such a well-respected man throughout the community, but I thought the way that he handled everything with integrity, and the way he treated people, nobody was any different from one another. And I think that's probably what brought him the greatest respect, because he always showed a tremendous amount of respect and compassion for everybody from every walk of life. And I learned a lot from him in that aspect.
Well, thank you for sharing. It brings back thoughts of John Wooden during my childhood. You think, it's one of those things. I always loved the underdog, so during the era of the 60s to 70s, when UCLA's basketball teams were winning all those titles, I thought, come on, Purdue, Rick Mount, can't you beat them? That type thing. But wow, reflection wise, after he left and just his pyramid of success, little did I know, even in elementary school, components of what I would hear or read about that aspects were forming within my philosophies in that piece. And what a wonderful set of leaders with Dean Smith, John Wooden on the athletic aspect that, quite honestly, I believe when you look at their successes over time and people like them, they really do translate into effective classroom and academic aspect.
They do. I recently heard Nick Saban make a statement that early in his career as a coach, even when he was successful, the relationship was what do I get from this? And he learned that's not how great leaders do things. Leadership needs to be transformational. That really hits home, especially with our classroom leaders. This can't be transactional. And by transactional, this can't even be getting a better test score or getting a better grade. This has to be transformational. You may not have gotten the grade you wanted or the test score you wanted, but if we can transform the knowledge and how you look at things differently based upon how this class went, that's how a great leader impacts students. Make it transformational, not transactional.
I love that. I love that. That transformation actually is the T, and that still word you see in my background. Dr. Scott, just reflecting back as we get ready to wind down this episode of Leadership Synergized, what's one advice item you would provide for individuals who either maybe, with your background, it's pretty broad, diverse in a positive way from the standpoint of moving from one career to another, but then is advancing along the leadership opportunity, the leadership roles?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give any young professional, any young leader is you have to first define your values, your core values. You have to define them, know them, and live by them. You're going to have success, especially if you continue to persevere through everything. But there's going to be challenges, and it is those core values that you have defined and live your life by that are going to help you to persevere through every challenge. I tell people all the time, when it hits the fan, you've got to be able to revert back to those core values and hang on to those with every fiber of your being, and you'll be able to get through those moments of challenge. That is the only way you're going to become a truly successful leader.
And those are excellent words of advice, everyone that's watching and will be watching through the archive version. So, Dr. Scott, what about Brady? Where's his next growth focus at, or where will it be?
Well, a lot of people would say, well, you've reached the top of the degree ladder. There's really not much left. And I'm like, just because we've made it to the top of the degree ladder doesn't mean we stop learning. I am always looking for the next thing to learn about, the next interesting idea. I obviously have ambitions and goals to return to a superintendency and will one day. I don't say it's a possibility. I will return to that chair one day because that's a goal and I will make it there. I'm always going to continue to find new avenues that perk my interest. But most importantly, I'm more excited about getting to see my daughters who are college graduates and preparing to enter the world and preparing to enter into their leadership journey. I'm more excited about getting to watch that process with them, and just the journey they'll go on.
You know, sitting here as a parent, but also as a grandparent, my wife and I talk about this often. When we're at family functions or we're at events, we really enjoy just setting off to the side in the background and just watching the kids, the grandkids. It just brings us so much joy and pleasure in that aspect where, you know, in younger days, we wanted to be engaged in all the discussion and what was going on. But to your point, there's just so much pride and joy and love that really builds into the heart. And I know God's provided us with those opportunities, watching our families as they're going through that maturation process.
You know, you make an excellent point. I had a coach tell me once we would be far better coaches if we raised our kids first and then went and became coaches afterwards. And I think that is a very profound statement because you view things so differently after you've raised your children. You're probably not nearly as harsh as you were as a younger coach, and you view things with a little more empathy, and you're a lot better then.
You know, I love that. That's a great piece of wisdom. And I, full transparency, I will reflect and made a lot of mistakes because we weren't able to raise our children first and coach second in that regard.
Yes.
So
Yes.
those words of wisdom are right on. Probably some of the best I've ever heard. Dr. Scott, someone out there who may want to reach out and get more of your knowledge or have a chance to engage with you and gain some advice, whether they're young educators or young leaders, how can they get a hold of you?
Obviously, email is probably the best. It is scottbra@clay.k12.in.us. I still call it Twitter, but X at B Scott ASSTSUP. One day we'll take that ASST out of there, but you can reach me through there. And you can always call Clay Community Schools. I'd love to talk to anybody. I'll talk to anybody about leadership or problems they're having and help them find the solution, not give them the solution.
Dr. Scott, my brother, my friend, I love you as a child of God. I appreciate all you're doing to serve him and his youngest children. And you're making a positive difference, my friend. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and you as well. You are making impacts that reach far beyond what you know. So I thank you for all you do.
Well, God bless you. And again, thank you for being here. On behalf of our special guest, Dr. Brady Scott, I'm Kevin Smith. God bless each one of you. And as the mantra in the background states, the life for success and significance, where we grow our value, and multiply the value of others comes through still self-awareness, transformation, love. Until we have a chance next week, God bless you. May all your prayers be answered along the path that God has with His purpose. Thank you. We love you.